environmental. Well, who I'm talking about today, which is people with learning disabilities. A lot of people who have learning disabilities have grown up in some really bizarre situations. More bizarre than you could ever realise. And what I'm talking about really is hospital wards. Even now, we still have a lot of people who have grown up on hospital wards. Now, when you've got 25 people in the same space being cared for by a small number of staff, you will almost inevitably, that will result in some bizarre behaviours, often around things like food and about power and stuff like that, and people will actually kind of try and empower themselves by using violence and things like this. Another example, I worked with a guy, and this was actually at the hospital at the Isle of Darwin, when it was still a large hospital for adults with learning disabilities. And I worked with this guy. Now, and he'd lived in that sort of setting for like 25 years. You know, since he was about 2 or 3. Now, what had happened, because what people would do, meal times. You get everybody sat around the table, and you'd say, you get everybody around the dinner tables and whatever, and you give them all their food, okay? And you know, you think, fairly natural, oh, you finished yours, would you like some more? There you go, there's some more. So what people learn by that is the faster you eat, the more you get. And so people would get to the point where they would eat so fast that you barely see them eat it, because they'd learned that if they ate fast, they'd get more. If they ate, and because you don't have with people who couldn't eat fast because they had like a physical disability or whatever, so they might slow down. So those people then become like, well, I've got to get food. Do you know what I mean? Because they get less food than the people who can eat fast. And the people who can eat fast get stronger. They get more powerful. The people who eat slowly get weaker compared to the people who eat quickly. Right? Can you see how bizarre, just by the nature of somebody thinking, oh, you finished yours, would you like some more? Fairly straightforward thing, but can you see, you do that to someone for 25 years, food becomes really, really important. And how much food people can get gets really, really important. And where, at the Isle of Darwin, what they used to have were big long wards. They were like T-shaped wards, and there was a bit of a day room, and in the centre they had the nurses' station, which was a little room, which was half timbered up to about there, with a door, and it was like all the way round, and then from there up to about here was reinforced glass, you know, the ones with the squares in. All right, that went all the way around this oval office thing, because it would then sit in the middle, and you could see everywhere on the ward, which in itself is a bit bizarre. You could see the bathrooms, you could see where people were sleeping. So we're talking about very bizarre situations. This guy had spent 25 years in this kind of food economy. We as staff, this was when I was doing my nurse training, we as staff, we made a cup of tea, pot of tea, you know, hot kettle pot of tea. As we walked out, he ran up, and you'd walk out, you'd lock the door, and as we were walking away, this guy walked up to the oval thing, or ran up to it, and put one foot on the side, and he was over the top, and he was in the office, because there was no roof to this thing, it was like kind of completely open at the top, and he was in the office with the teapot, drinking out the teapot. And by the time we had got our keys out and got back into the office, and as you can imagine, we were trying to do this really quickly, he'd finished a teapot full of tea. All right, because of how powerful that sort of situation, that kind of institutionalisation was. And I mean, this was straight out the kettle. And he just drank the whole thing. In the time that it took for us to step one step away from the office, to turn round and try and unlock the door, he had been over the top and had drunk all of this tea.
I don't understand how he gets over the top.
He put one foot, you know, I said timbered up to there. He put one foot on there, jumped up, and grabbed the top and just flipped himself over, and landed on the other side.
I'm sorry.
So what we're talking about really, environmental is about kind of the environments that people have lived in and how bizarre those environments have been and what that means. This guy is just a guy. The guy that I'm talking about is just some guy, you know, but because he's lived in such a bizarre situation, it's meant that his behaviour has become bizarre because it's a strange place. And there's lots of other things that I could tell you about that I'm not actually willing to tell you about at this point in time as to what that can do to people. Things about kind of, it's, you know, this is what they were entirely male, entirely sex, gender specific wards. So you'd have an entirely male ward, an entirely female ward, right? And people would not mix. So people, you know, 25 years, people would not mix with the opposite sex, other than staff members who had ultimate power. You know what I mean?
It must be horrible, like, I don't know, living around like locked doors all the
Yep.
time and
Yep, absolutely. And that's
set routine of what you've got to do.
absolutely. And I think that's important is to think of yourself in that situation.